Over the course of NBA history, the game has changed and we've seen many different teams stamp and make a name for themselves amongst the best. But too many times us NBA fans stop showing love to these teams that helped make the league what it is today. But it's time I change that and highlight some of the most overlooked and underrated systems in recent memory. So without further ado, let's get into these historic teams. In 2004, one of the most transcendent offenses was put on full display in Phoenix. The 04-05 Suns, led by Mike D'Antoni, was one of the most influential systems in NBA history. Known for its fast pace and quick shots, the 7-second offense was introduced to change the way that side of basketball was played. For a little background, this team went 62-20 and led the league in nearly every major offensive category, including 110 points per game and an offensive rating of 114.5. They also led the NBA in 95.9 possessions per 48 minutes. The head of this snake was 30-year-old Steve Nash. His unselfishness and awareness of where his teammates will be made this offense run fluid. D'Antoni's vision wouldn't have worked as well if it wasn't for Nash's IQ and pace of play, which we'll dive into in a bit. The supporting cast of Phoenix was also perfectly constructed. Joe Johnson, Shawn Marion, and Quentin Richardson were all three quality pieces whose playstyle off the ball complemented their offensive system. But one of the most important parts of this lineup was Amar'e Stoudemire and his play at center. However, it took some convincing from D'Antoni to Stoudemire and the Suns front office for Amar'e to buy into his role as a small ball center.
And then even then, if I remember correctly, it wasn't the first 2 or 3 games. It took about 5 games to get Amar'e completed at the 5 and get it together. I was still a little nervous about going in because what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? And, and you have other people that, on your staff or just all in good faith don't believe in, Amar'e's not going to be able to play the 5.
Right.
So it took a while to get some toughness and do what I thought was right.
This decision would pay dividends as the Suns were able to run bigger teams off the floor. Look at the shot clock when this shot goes up. 20 seconds. This just shows how fast D'Antoni wanted his team to play and how it was effective. They thrived on pushing the ball even after made baskets. Nash would navigate up the court into quick sets like this drag screen and double drag screen to get quick shots. It was constant movements and fast-paced play that threw teams off in this era. This quick hitter named 21 was another set that they did many things out of on the break. First, they get to a simple popper for the 3. Then they turn this into a handoff and screen into a 2-man game in a pick and roll. Then Nash will push the ball with the pass to get back into that handoff and plug his shooter at the top of the key for an open man after that pick and roll. The Nash and Amar'e pick and roll will work so well because look at the Rockets personnel on the floor, a slow center. Teams could not keep up with the speed the Suns had in the front court with Amar'e Stoudemire and Shawn Marion. However, the Suns worked very well in the half court. When I tell y'all Mike D'Antoni's offensive playbook is deep, that's an understatement. Our most recent memories of his offense is just watching James Harden dribble around in ISO against teams, but back in the day, it was a complete opposite. One of the sets in the endless D'Antoni bag that Phoenix found success is this fist action. It started with a ball screen leading right into a pin down for a jumper. They could then transition this into a flare screen out of that action. The man in the corner would cut to the opposite side to take away the help from that side to open up for the flare. Another set that I love from this team was their plays from the elbow. They had endless setups from elbow touches. It started with a simple pin down screen on the strong side, and if that wasn't open, there was another pin down on the weak side. They then could counter that into a handoff going to that second pin down again. In this set, they faked the pin down and Quentin Richardson back cuts for the dunk. Now sometimes instead of pin downs, the guard will go through to fake a back screen for a curl into the jumper. The Suns will use that action to confuse non-switching defenses on who's getting the pin down. They would then turn this same back screen by Nash into another back screen set by him for the lob. You see they run it again, but the lob isn't open, so Amar'e posts up and goes to work on Tim Duncan. Now the last of the elbow actions I'll get into is why Mike D'Antoni's decision on running small ball was so beneficial. Stoudemire's athleticism at the 5 was a clear advantage to get downhill against slower bigs. By having two forwards in the front court who could move the way these two did was a cheat code in the early 2000s. This potent offense eventually met its match in the Western Conference Finals against the Spurs. Playoff basketball is a totally different type of game, and the D'Antoni style has not always complemented the slow pace in the postseason. However, this style of play introduced the world to small ball, and Mike D'Antoni is a big reason why offenses like the Sacramento Kings are the way they are today. Although this was just last season, many people have overlooked and forgotten how special Sacramento's offense really was. They averaged a league-leading 120.7 points per game and the highest offensive rating in NBA history at 119.4. But for the past decade plus, the Kings were an afterthought in a stacked Western Conference. In 2021 and 2022, they made big splashes by trading for all-star Domantas Sabonis and signing Warriors assistant Mike Brown as their head coach. These moves were seen as questionable at the time, but GM Monty McNair had a vision that would quickly come to fruition. Mike Brown transformed his offense and made it into an old-school, team-oriented engine. He implemented older concepts like the Princeton action along with handoffs and frequent cuts heavily into his sets. The Kings ranked first in the league in handoffs and third in elbow touches per game. Sabonis was also third in the league in elbow touches among players. This offense works so well because of the passing ability of Sabonis and his versatility with the ball. These abilities are showcased in the old school action I mentioned, Princeton. The basic action of the Princeton offense is the big will have the ball around the elbow on top of the key area, and the wing will cut to the basket to open up a handoff for an opportunity like this. This handoff can turn into a 2-on-1 with the opposing big man if the defender goes over the screen. Sometimes the play doesn't even make it that far because the initial cutter can slip the screen like this. Teams tried to deny the first handoff, but the Kings will counter that into another drop-off to get an open 3. Here Fox pushes the ball with a pass right to Sabonis on the elbow, and immediately following that is a handoff to Kevin Huerter. Huerter was one of the best movement shooters in the league last year and was first among players in handoffs given per game. But he also could put it on the deck from these handoffs, and here the two-man game forced the help, leaving Murray open for a 3. Little details mean everything in this offense, and Mike Brown gave his team the freedom to work for themselves on the floor. This freedom is shown here as Sabonis catches at the high post, and Huerter has a choice to run a split action with either the man in the corner or the guy on the wing. And you see he chooses the wing, but instead of setting that screen, he fakes it, and Sabonis' passing ability is displayed here on a dime. The freedom was also shown here as Keegan Murray rejects the back screen on the baseline to get a pin down from Sabonis, and realizes he doesn't have an open look, so he resets by giving the ball to Sabonis on the wing to run into a 3. At the end of this play, you see he has a defender on his back since he's going over the screen, and a center in drop coverage. By the Knicks failing to run Murray off the 3-point line, he's able to create separation for the 3. Here Sabonis rejects the handoff, and Mitchell sets a screen on the wing, and the switch defender was too late to recover, which led to a 3. These two plays both show how the Kings were so versatile in their responses to defenses going over and under screens. Sacramento was so effective in this offense because everyone they put on the perimeter can both shoot it and put it on the deck as needed.
Milwaukee early from 3. They've now got 11. There's the split cut action they run. Mitchell behind the Sabonis screen. The midi is beautiful.
However, the Kings season ended in 7 games to the Warriors as their offense just lost juice. Their philosophy stayed intact, but with the Warriors just planting Kevon Looney in the paint and daring Sabonis to shoot, Sac's offense became vulnerable to the versatile Warriors defense. I do think, however, that was only the beginning to the rise of the Kings in the West, and they are a few tweaks and experiences away from really contending to get where the 2008 Magic reached at the end of their season. From 2007 to 2011, the Orlando Magic went 4 straight seasons with over 50 wins, but their 2008 and 2009 campaigns might have been one of the most influential offensive spans in the past 20 years. In 2008, Orlando was top 12 in points per game, offensive rating, and pace, and in 2009 they were 6th in points per game and 4th in offensive rating. Led by Dwight Howard, Hedo Turkoglu, Rashard Lewis, and some fantastic pieces around them, the Magic helped begin the three-point shooting revolution. Their 4-out-1 in offense, masterminded by coach Stan Van Gundy, exploited having a dominant center surrounded by 4 great shooters on the perimeter.
When you guys were in Orlando, we always said, or at least I thought you guys had the best offense in the NBA, or at least like the toughest to guard. When it's like, was it Turk, Dwight, like
Rashard
Lewis, and everything.
Yeah.
That
Petrus.
Yeah, was it 4-out, 1 in?
The league.
And you guys are really shooting.
The problem.
They were so ahead of their time with this offense because of their spacing and use of a stretch 4 in Rashard Lewis. Lewis shot nearly 40% from 3 on 7 attempts per game at 6'10". Doing that consistently in 2008 at power forward was rare at the time. To highlight how great of a shooter he was, Lewis led the entire NBA in catch and shoot threes, ahead of players like Danny Granger, Mike Bibby, Ray Allen, and others. A lot of the open looks he and his teammates got were because of Dwight Howard with and without the ball. When he had the ball, teams feared him so much in the post that they would often double him and give up an open shot, then let him go one-on-one with their bigs. In fact, in 2008, the Magic shot 49% from threes that led directly after a Dwight Howard post-up. Orlando then led the NBA in catch-and-shoot threes made and shot 39% on these attempts. But even when Dwight didn't touch the ball, he still had an effect on the offense. So often during that time, teams were used to, quote, tagging a roller with their power forward since many of them weren't three-point shooters. Tagging the roller is a term when defending a pick and roll. The help defense will show on the roller until their teammate can recover back onto that man and quickly try to get back to their man afterwards. But since the Magic had Rashard Lewis, teams will pay for helping so hard on Dwight rolling.
The league,
and you guys are really
the problem was the league, and it changed quickly. The league basically realized you can't tag the roller with the 4-man every time, right? And
this counter to beat the tag is one of the main reasons teams switch nearly every ball screen today. Here in the pick and roll, you see Ray Allen anticipate tagging Dwight on a roll, which left JJ Redick wide open for a 3. Here again, you see Dalembert pick up Lewis on a roll, but miscommunication leads to an easy midi. Next in the ball screen, you'll see Rashard Lewis shake up as Lamar Odom is ready to tag Dwight, which leaves him open for a 3. And lastly, Odom tags again, which forces Fisher to rotate, leaving LA in scramble mode and Redick open for a 3. But when teams decided to not help on the pick and roll, respect the outside shot, and lead the centers one-on-one with Dwight, he made them pay.
Can they get a good look at the 3? Because Steve Nash at some point is not going to be able to, as Howard,
have the opportunities to shoot the ball, guys.
All right, Gerald, thank you. It's nice. And you've got the Thunder shooting 54%. You got to move your feet, put a body on someone. What it takes to win games, but mainly at home, they get it done.
Clock down to 10. Ibaka and Howard will send somebody else.
The Magic in both the 2009 and 2010 postseasons came up short despite their dynamic offenses. In the late 2000s and early 2010s, teams just caught on quickly to how the league was changing and how Orlando operated with the function of their team. Their time to win a championship was very limited with the rise of teams like the Heat, Mavs, Spurs, and others.
And then all of a sudden the stretch 4 died because all of a sudden everybody just, hey, I'm going to play Iguodala at the 4. I'm going to play Tatum at the 4, right?
Yep.
And I'm just switch everything. So it was kind of like a small window for us to win.
Regardless of how this era of the Magic turned out, they deserve their flowers for transcending NBA offenses to what they are today. But along with the great offense, they had a dominant defense much like the 2013 Indiana Pacers had. Now, I can't make a video on the most underrated or overlooked systems in NBA history and not include one of the toughest defensive units of all time. So often we only talk about this Pacers team because of Paul George and the run they had with the Miami Heat, but rarely do we speak on the defense that anchored their 56-win season. The 2013-14 Pacers had a 99.3 defensive rating, which was first in the league, while the league average was 106.7. Their opponents averaged 92.3 points per game, which was second in the starting five of George Hill, Lance Stephenson, Paul George, David West, and Roy Hibbert all finished in the top 20 in both league-wide defensive win shares and defensive rating. Through early January of 2014, they had a 110.2 adjusted defensive efficiency rating, which would be behind only 2 teams in history of the NBA. The stats back up my claim for this Pacers team being one of the best defensive teams of all time, but now let's look at the film. Their defense was fueled by elite perimeter defender Paul George and elite rim protector Roy Hibbert. This season, PG garnered first-team all-defensive honors and Roy Hibbert got second-team all-defense. The philosophy was to never switch ball screens. Hibbert stayed in drop coverage and welcomed anyone inside the paint. Any pick and rolls that did not include Hibbert, the Pacers would hedge and recover. What helped with this is Indiana's perimeter defenders always fought through screens and chased to recover the ball handler. Here you see the first ball screen, PG hedges and gets back onto LeBron, but the next screen involves Hibbert, so he stays in the drop and forces the turnover. This play shows how the drop coverage and size of Hibbert dictated plays in the pick and roll. And here again the Pacers hard hedge and end up with PG squaring up with the offensive player for the turnover. They focused on helping on dribble drives and recovering to their man. This team defensively was the definition of having your homies back. The length and instincts of Paul George complemented Hibbert's paint-sitting dynamic because players would be hesitant to attack the paint, which left PG lurking in passing lanes. However, Roy Hibbert went from an elite all-world rim protector to falling off a cliff due to NBA offensive evolving and countering his defensive style. Teams started to draw him out of the paint and space the floor. He was so successful because teams were feeding into his strengths, which was guarding inside scorers and protecting the rim. In the first round of the 2014 playoffs, the Hawks started Pero Antic, who was an average center but could stretch the floor and hit outside shots, which played Roy off the court. Antic alongside Paul Millsap gave the Pacers and Roy Hibbert a look they weren't familiar with by running a 5-out type offense and pick and pops with their 2 big men. Hibbert and Indiana's defense struggled as he was either late on his closeouts or the Hawks would attack the paint since there was no paint presence inside. Here you see Teague attack the rim easily since the Pacers big man is stuck onto the perimeter guarding Millsap. Then on this play, he's late on the block attempt since he couldn't rotate off the shooter Antic. Through games 3 through 7, Roy only averaged 17 minutes per game opposed to his 30 per game in the regular season. He got back to form in the second round against the Wizards because Washington stuck to their normal lineups of Nene and Marcin Gortat both on the floor at the same time. But playing more shooters in the front court became the blueprint for countering the strong Pacers defense, as the Heat went from Udonis Haslem at the 4 against them in 2013 to more Shane Battier minutes in 2014 who can shoot, which hurt Hibbert. Immediately after the 2014 postseason, Indiana faced many challenges and to this day has never gotten back to that elite form they once were at. Although Frank Vogel's system was quickly figured out after that 2013 season, the peak of their defensive run was one of the toughest defensive units the NBA had seen at the time, and like another team from 2013, highlighted how great the 2010s era was for hoops. The 2013-14 Portland Trail Blazers completely flipped the narrative on how their offense was years prior. They won 54 games while being 4th in the league in points per game and 2nd in offensive rating after being 15th in the league in both points per game and offensive rating with only 33 wins a year before. Coached by Terry Stotts, this high 3-point volume offense was the introduction to some fun years in Portland. They were led by a 23-year-old Damian Lillard alongside 3 players in the heart of their prime in Nick Batum, Wesley Matthews, and LaMarcus Aldridge. This offense was 4th in 3-pointers made and 3rd in attempts, but only 18th in 2-pointers made and 17th in attempts. That was in large part because of how great they were beyond the arc. They had 4 rotation players shoot nearly 40% from 3. Like I said previously, this offense was ran from the perimeter. It had very simple sets that could do many different things within it. Coach Stotts ordered a lot of pin downs and flare screens, which created open layups and looks for his jump shooters. The first looks out of these plays will be a layup like this from the back screen. Here you see Lopez and Aldridge set corresponding pin downs and flare screens, and Dame hits Wes Matthews on a cut for a layup. Sometimes if that back screen wasn't open for the layup, Portland will go to pick and rolls. Here you see Mo Williams isn't open and goes straight to the corner so Batum in the center can run a two-man game. On this play, Batum again runs a pick and roll with Aldridge, but instead hands it off to Mo Williams and his defender is a few steps late so he gets to an easy midi. And here, Thomas Robinson sets a ghost screen and uses his athleticism to get to the hoop and dump it off for the bucket. But these swirl actions were most dangerous when developed for catch and shoot threes. This season, Dame, Wesley Matthews, and Mo Williams all shot 40% on threes off the catch, while Nick Batum shot 38%. Here, out of the same actions again, Batum comes off the pin down screen for a three. Portland would sometimes run multiple players off one screener like they did with LaMarcus Aldridge here. The primary ball handler often had the option to set a pin down screen as well, and here, Dame sets one then runs off a separate screen from LA to curl through for a midi. And to counter teams anticipating their typical flare screen actions, Mo Williams read the defender and redirected back off the screen for the three. However, they were only 11th in catch and shoot threes attempted per game, all while being second in the league in overall catch and shoot field goal attempts per game. That was because of LaMarcus Aldridge's ability off the catch in the mid-range and Dame's ability off the dribble from beyond the arc. In his prime, LA was one of the best mid-range shooters out of the pick and pops. His ability to get to his spots and elevate over defenders was second to none. And as far as Dame, everyone knows his shooting ability off the dribble. LaMarcus was also very productive out of the post, which Terry Stotts loved to isolate him into. In the last feature out of the same swirl set I've been talking about, they run a pin down flare screen action, but the man running out the Aldridge screen will instead feed it to him and clear out. Here again you see the two screens, which leads to a one-on-one for the big man to operate. He was 1 of 1 when it came to post-work production at a time where back-to-the-basket bigs were in nearly every starting lineup. The 2013 Trailblazers were a fun team to watch come up from some really bad years and experiences in the past. They gave us one of the most memorable playoff moments in the past few decades before falling in the second round of the Western Conference semis. But overall, this is another system that gets severely overlooked even though they were super productive during a very fun era of basketball. These 5 systems each stamped themselves into NBA history in their own unique way. The way offense is played today can be attributed to both the Suns and Magic in the 2000s, as they helped pave the way for modern teams to reset the record books like the Sacramento Kings. I'm sure in the future we'll have a lot more teams to look back on and highlight how they changed the game as well. But thank you guys so much for the love I've gotten lately, and keep sticking around because this is just the beginning and I'm only going to get better with these videos. Appreciate y'all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.